Welcome to the July Lanchester meeting. Once again, can't believe how soon we're around to another month and another meeting, but always look forward to being here, seeing all you guys. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jake Byler. I have been a part of this group for quite a few years and have gotten a lot of value from it and have learned a lot from coming to groups like this and others in the area. It's just simply a group that was started about 10 years ago. Joe Leofsky dreamed it up, saw a need in the local community for just general education around investing, and that's still our main goal. We have grown since then. We have shifted. We've done some things a bit differently, but the goal still really is just for general education and connection and inspiration, I like to say, primarily in real estate investing, but even just business in general and life in general. So thanks for coming out. Nice room full of people. Should be a fun time. Most of you probably are familiar with the facilities here. If you haven't been here before, the restrooms are up that hallway all the way to the end, or there's also a couple down this hallway about halfway down on the right. There's some water on the table in the back. If you are not on our email list and you would like to be added, there's a paper on the table in the back with instructions of how to get on our email list. As many of you know, these meetings are paid for by sponsors. Once in a while, we put out a donation box. Next month will be one of those times. I'll talk about that at the end of the meeting. But primarily, they are paid for by sponsors, and we have sponsors that, there's 5 sponsors that paid for the entire year this year, and they are Nathan Rittenhouse from Lanchester Credit Union. Nate is with us here tonight. Jeff Moeller, we're going to hear from Jeff in just a bit. Joe Leofsky, like I said, Joe started this meeting way back. He's a property manager, Compass Property Management. Dave Wolf from Principal Mortgage Group. Dave has been to our meetings quite a few times. And Benyo Ash. Benyo's a local realtor, good friend of mine. So those guys paid for the seat that you're sitting in. So Joe, you can come on up. Jeff, you can come on up. Jeff's going to tell us a little bit about what he does. Jeff is a local investor. Jeff is a guy that guys like Eli and myself got connected with pretty early on in our investing careers, and have learned a lot from someone like Jeff. So he's going to talk to you a little bit about what he might have to offer if you're looking for some maybe some private money or maybe some coaching. I'm not sure what you're going to talk about. So take it away.
It's all private money tonight. I'm Jeff Moeller. I've been doing private lending, connecting borrowers and lenders since 2007. I got involved at the beginning of the financial crisis. Everybody remembers 2008, but it really started in the spring of 2007 as the high interest rate lenders started to disappear, funds began to tighten up, and it only became a major issue a year later, year and a half later. So that's how I got started. I had a number of rich people that I knew and had a bunch of people that needed money, and I said, hey, why don't you lend money to this guy? And it really hadn't been done in an organized fashion that I know of before that, and so I feel like I was the grandfather of the hard money loan industry here in Lanchester. I met somebody tonight coming in, and he started asking me questions. I thought, well, this is really good, because why don't I just go through that? Current rates are between 11 and 12%. Oftentimes there's an origination fee of 1.5. That's 1.5% of the loan amount. My loans, I require the interest be paid monthly directly to the lender. There's a 1-year balloon. That means that at the end of 1 year, the whole amount that's borrowed becomes due. Hopefully by that time you'll either have sold the property or refinanced it. I don't have a specific ARV that I'm looking for. I'm really looking for somebody with experience, some money, somebody like that. I often said I don't look for the one pickup truck kind of a guy that is looking to do his first property with no real experience. So I'm looking for somebody that's involved in the industry and has some money or family behind them. I know that there's a lot of young guys out there, especially in the playing community. I really put a high emphasis in those cases on family connections. I also like to see a tax return and a personal financial statement if you have them available, just so I know who you are and get to know you a little bit. Have any questions? Yes.
What correlation in the environment now?
Correlation? Well, it's not near as tight. They are tightening up, but not as tight as it was. There were a lot of good people getting their loans called that had never had that happen before in 2008. And specifically, the real estate industry, especially the real estate development industry, was targeted back in 2008, and it's not that way right now, I don't think. Okay, well, turn it over to Jake and the panel.
Thank you, Jeff. And am I correct, Jeff? You would also, if someone, so you're connecting borrowers and lenders. So if someone has some money that they would want to put out, but they would want someone like you to guide them, vet the borrower stuff, you would connect with someone like that, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep, it's good. I know when I started out, getting connected with private lenders was huge for me. I know some people, depending on mindsets, depending on how you think about paying interest, some people are thinking, I would never pay 11 or 12% for interest. That's just crazy. But if you think about like that's a way to get started. Like if you're not going to do the deal at all, otherwise, to me, paying 12% is really not a big deal, especially if you only have the money for 3 to 6 months. Of course, it can draw out longer than that, but that is a really, really good way to get in if you don't want to flip or something. And what most people don't think about, it's actually sort of a layer of protection. It's sort of a, so if you go to Jeff asking for money for a flip or something, he's going to look at the deal. He's going to look at the possible risk. And if he's not comfortable with something, he'll probably tell you. So it can kind of be an extra layer of protection and getting some professional eyes on the deal. So connect with Jeff if you're interested in that. Kind of a side note here. I'm curious. I know I saw a bunch of you, but I'm curious how many of you were at Bavanda's open house when Will Guidera was speaking the other day. Yeah, good number of people. I'm just fascinated by stuff like that. It was a really good, really fun event, and I love Will's message, but I'm also fascinated by how much he gets paid to do that. He got paid almost what I used to make in a year when I worked at the shed shop 15 years ago. And that's interesting to me that someone can make that amount of money with a 45-minute keynote and a half an hour Q&A. But he didn't start there. He has an amazing story, and he has an amazing skill of speaking, and therefore he's in high demand, and people are willing to pay him a lot of money to speak. So I just thought that was fun. All right, we're going to jump into the main topic, main topic of the evening. You guys can come on up here. Joe Leofsky, Eli King, Clair Hoover. We're going to, hopefully we can pull this together that it's actually a format that will make sense. The goal of the evening is basically to select a couple different asset classes and compare them against each other, pros and cons. And as we were getting ready for this, I realized more and more that this is an incredibly broad field. I don't know which bunny trails we're going to pick and which ones we're not, but it's a very, very broad field that we could cover. But the idea is, a lot of times I was this way when I started. I just wanted to ask the question, what's a good investment? What should I invest in? Just assuming someone would have the magic answer. And since I have realized, we have to ask ourselves a number of questions. It's like, well, what do you really want? I mean, the obvious question is we want to make money, right? But what's more important? Do you want to make money now? Do you want to make money further down the road? If you have a tax problem already, maybe your investment choice will look different than if you're just getting started. So it's a really, really broad field. So should be fun to dissect that a bit. So Clair Hoover, all the way on the right, self-storage pro, has been doing that for quite a while. He's going to tell us a little bit about maybe some transitions that he sees in the self-storage space. Anxious to hear that. Eli King, unless this is your first time here, you've probably heard Eli speak. Eli is Lanchester County investor, single-family homes, small multi-units, does a lot of business. He's done that much that I think he could actually do it in his sleep. And I actually suspect that he does, because I have no idea how else he would get everything done that he does. So might have to ask him about that. Joe Leofsky, mobile home park investor, not new to single family homes, has done a lot of that, does property management, still does that, is very familiar with all of that. And somehow he has started enjoying where he can rent out a piece of dirt and doesn't have to deal with some of the things on a day-to-day basis with the tenants. So that might give us a clue there. He's a property manager. He's been doing that for a long time. And he's kind of enjoyed just renting out dirt. So we'll hear more about that. Before we jump into the main format of the panel discussion, I'm going to hand it off to Joe. Joe is going to run us down a list of different things that you might consider as you are investing. Things like, how much cash do you have? Like, what do you have to bring to the table? Do you have a tax problem, or are you still working on making a tax problem? Because really that is step number one. First thing is to create a tax problem, and then from there you can work on solving your tax problem. So he's going to go down a list of things like that and go across the top talking about long-term rentals, self-storage, mobile home parks, and how each of those might fit that category. So they're going to do that, and they're going to be rating these things from 1 to 5, and then we're going to dissect that later. But I'm going to hand it off to Joe, and you do that.
All righty. Thanks, Jake. All right, so I guess to try and, like Jake said, there's a lot of things to try and digest, and to try and like whittle it down, so you can see some things maybe with numbers. We're going to try and, like you said, rate these from 1 to 5, just kind of what we're thinking, and maybe it'll help you think about it. So the first one's availability. How available is this asset that you're interested in? Claire, Eli, what would you say the availability is for long-term rentals, rental property?
So we have 54,000. So this is the place to play the game if you want to. 70% of them, this is one of the most fragmented asset classes I've ever been in. 70% of them are single owner, single location. We call them mom and pops. Massive opportunity. They are not keeping up, and are also getting refied at higher interest rates. They don't know how to keep up because they're still using answering machines and a yellow page ad. And the world has changed so much. So massive consolidation. They're available every day. By the way, that's 84 square miles of self-storage. If you take all of the self-storage in the United States put together, 5.5 hours to drive around at 60 miles an hour. Or Jake, I did a little calculation. With your good sneakers and 2 cups of coffee, you can do it 23% less time than I could drive it. He's fast. So availability, I think it's incredible.
Well, we're good. So what about long-term rentals? Just long-term rental, what would, in your opinion, what do you think availability is on that scale of 1 to 5? Pretty easy to get long-term rentals today, right?
5 being the best?
The easiest, yeah.
You asked me.
Both of you.
Okay.
5.
Yeah, I would agree with you. So, Claire, so you're saying that self-storage is pretty easy.
Absolutely. I would put that at a 5 as well.
What would you do, Eli? Would you make self-storage a 5?
For a normal guy like me, I would put it at about 1.
So you leave the pressure up to me. So there's a cost of entry. There are several, but there's not near as many self-storage units as there are single family. So sorry, Claire, I think we're going to go with a 3 then. We'll just go right in the middle. Mobile home parks, There's actually a few less of them. There's about 40,000 of them in the United States. Do you guys have any input on the availability of mobile home parks? What do you think they would be on the availability scale?
I've had experience with mobile home park. I would actually put them at a 2, right below self-storage.
Probably not quite as readily available. And this was an afterthought, but syndication, it's going to be a little bit different, but the availability of syndication, I mean, if you go on Facebook, you could probably find something. The problem's going to be vetting it, doing the due diligence. I don't know, what do you guys think?
Availability would definitely have to be 5. Like,
There's-
if you have 100,000, you can lose it pretty easy in syndications.
You know what? I think I'm going to go with Eli. All right. Cash required. The amount of cash that's required for a long-term rental. Not a lot. Pretty easy. I think we can say that's a 5 because most banks will lend that. So that's pretty easy. Self-storage. How hard is it to come up with money to buy a self-storage unit?
So we're talking about the amount of cash needed, or just the ability of a lender to cough it up?
Next one's financing. So the cash required, like for the individual owner to get into the deal, and then how easy it would be to finance with
You
the
almost
bank.
have to go with an average. You can get into self-storage with one shed in your backyard, technically, or you can buy a $10 million facility. So I'd probably put it somewhere in the middle.
Somewhere around 3-ish.
Yeah.
I would probably say a 1 or 2.
Cash required. There are some. There are
Yeah,
several owner finance. So we'll go with the 3. Mobile home parks. Everyone I've done was owner financing, so I would probably tend to lean towards at least a 3 on that. Syndication. Lots of cash required.
1.
Yeah. Financing, once again, long-term rentals is probably going to be a 5. It's probably the easiest thing to finance. Starting to see a pattern here. Self-storage, how easy is that to get financing?
A little bit harder than long-term, but not a lot. Maybe a 4.
Okay,
I could agree with that.
all righty. Mobile home parks, not everybody loves them. Probably going to be a 3. You guys agree with that?
There are some good managers out there. I would say 3 would be fair.
Financing of a syndication, I don't even think we could put that as a 1.
0.
I think it's going to be a 0.
Jeff, would you lend on a syndication?
How management intense is it? Maybe this will be the first one where long-term rental is not going to be a 5. What are you guys thinking? How difficult is it to manage a long-term rental?
Compared to not doing anything, or compared to the self-storage and mobile home?
Yeah. I think. So me personally, I'm thinking it's probably about a 4.
I would have to give it a 4+ at least. It's not as easy as doing nothing, but it's still pretty pretty easy compared to, say, managing all the different units you have in a self-storage. You have to be somewhat organized and whatever to manage that many self-storage
Can you
units.
find a property manager for a long-term rental fairly easy? Is there more than one of them in town?
Definitely. Yeah. Let's give that a 4.
Might not be the same with.
Yeah, I would agree with a 4.
Okay. How about self-storage?
So self-storage 10 years ago was a 3. Incredibly easy to manage. Yellow page ad and a answering machine would get it done. Today it's a 5. However, we do have great third-party management available, but you've got to be out of a certain size to cover their fixed costs. So 40,000 square feet and up, $4 to $5 million facility, get good management. Below that, you've got a handful. It's a lot to manage.
Kind of on your.
Probably a 5.
We'll give it a 4. 5 for larger ones, 4 for smaller ones. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
No, actually, the larger one you can farm it out to third party, and then you've got no responsibility. If you're too small, you're not going to be able to afford good management. It's going to be on you. So in my opinion, the smaller one is harder to manage.
Harder to manage.
You're going to have to self-manage a small facility. So it's to me it's harder than residential.
Okay. So let's make that what do you think?
3.
A 3. Okay. Mobile home park, like with a lot of things, It really depends on what you're doing. There's people that buy mobile home parks with a lot of park-owned homes. I would never do that. I mean, trailers melt when they get wet. And if you got a bunch of park-owned homes and somebody's, got a roof leak or the water heater leaks and they don't tell you about it for a month, you have a problem. If you have tenant-owned homes, which is kind of what I like, your responsibility ends at the dirt. Like Jake said, I love renting dirt. Can't hurt dirt, But I'd say that's probably going to be about a 3. Once again, if you find a larger one, you can get professional management. If it's a smaller one, you're going to be doing it yourself. Ease of management with the syndication, it's going to be real easy because you don't have to do anything. Control of the asset. If you have a long-term rental, how much control do you have? If things go bad, the shit hits the fan, can you just buckle down and go fix it and make it better?
With single families, yeah, it can be, if there's a problem, it can be fixed or sold. If you get tired of it, you can sell it and move on.
The easiest things to sell, is that a 5?
That would be a 5.
I would think so. Self-storage?
Yeah, it's still a hot commodity. If you're looking at an out, absolutely. It'd be very easy to sell. Buyers are lined up.
Oops. Control, actually these should be 1s. Well, 5s, easy to sell. Cap rates have finally started to go back up a little bit with the interest rates, but control, well, syndication, you're going to have 0 control again. Tax advantage. What's tax advantage for long-term rentals? Are there any tax advantages?
Yeah, so you have the standard depreciation, but even more exciting, you have, these days you have, your accountants can have software that you can do cost segregation. That costs about $400 or so. So even on single-family homes, you can do cost segregation. So you can take the stepped-up depreciation, and I consider that to be a very valuable part of single-family homes these days.
All right. What about self-storage, Claire?
Pretty much same thing. Cost segs, especially above a certain size, are actually extremely cost effective. We can hit 35% year 1 with a cost seg analysis.
Yeah, same thing with
Maybe a 5+ for that one, huh?
same thing with mobile home parks. That's one piece where if somebody has a lot of park-owned homes, you get more. But we're still, believe it or not, about the same, about 35 or 40%, because there's in-ground infrastructure, blacktop, and any homes or any buildings that you do own. I don't know. You haven't invested in a syndication. I don't know about tax.
Give them a 5. You can write off all your losses.
Oh, okay.
And I know self-storage syndications, they're doing cost segs as well and passing it straight through to the investors, so should be a 5.
How about scalability? How easy is it to scale long-term rentals?
So that one, that's where it gets a bit more challenging. So if you are looking to become a billionaire, it's going to be a lot harder to do with single-family homes than with any of the other assets here. So, I mean, it's pretty simple. We all have 8th grade education at least. So if you're looking to, invest $100 million in real estate, it's going to take a lot of single-family homes to do that, and only $10 million self-storage facilities. So that's one area where we would definitely have the disadvantage in single-family homes. So scalability, I would put that at 2.
Self-storage and mobile home parks, if you can find them, I think they're pretty scalable. What's the biggest one that you've seen for sale recently?
Biggest self-storage facility?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
There's some big ones out there.
Well, it depends on what market you're in, but there's stuff in excess of $25 million for a single facility.
Wow.
Our scalability experience is very personal to me. We agreed to keep growing 5 facilities at a time until we weren't happy, and then sell 5 and go back to where we're happy. We found our mix if you're self-managing, which I do, we're good up to about 30 facilities. Above that, we are going to outsource them to third parties. So I have unlimited scalability as an investor, but as an owner-manager, depends how big you want to make your team and how many hours a week you want to work.
I'm thinking you can tie up a lot of money there. Syndication. How about syndication? Is that scalable?
That would be a 1 because that depends on how many $100,000 you have. So if you have $100,000, you can do a syndication, but you can't do 20 of them.
All right. I don't think Eli likes syndication. So just a quick, to look at that real quick, long-term rentals seem to be the way to go. The only thing is scalability. Yet there's a lot of people in this room that are investing in apartment buildings, self-storage units, mobile home parks, or other larger assets. And I think the main reason really is this. So for people that are just wanting to get into real estate, I think you got to at least look at long-term rentals. I mean, there's just, the benefits are staring you right in the face. I think, and Eli's got a couple stories about that. But if you have a lot of money, you might want to go across something that takes cash that doesn't work for somebody else. I was talking to the guys earlier. Mobile home parks, the management, it's somewhere in the middle. You can farm a lot of it out. But I have a property management company. So for me, that piece is already solved. So for me, mobile home parks are a really good investment because the dealing with the tenant piece is already taken care of. So anyway, tonight we're going to kind of talk to you about different asset classes and then playing to your strengths, playing, where you do have the time, resources, or money to invest.
I have one of those mics. You guys are okay with sharing 2 for 3 guys there? Okay, well, that was good. That actually worked out really well, Joe. Kind of give us an idea of kind of pros and cons of different things. Boy, where do we even start here? So let's do this. So let's imagine there's a deal that's coming across the table, coming across your desk, Claire. Just imagine a real life scenario. For whatever reason, you get a contact. Somebody says, hey, we've got this single family home, Lanchester City. It's an estate sale, needs some cleaning up, but good property. Let's say it's a 400 block of West King. They're asking $70,000. Are you interested?
I was until you gave me the address, but
Okay, so what are you going to do with it?
I'm going to turn that over to my good friend Eli.
Okay, so Eli.
Thank you, Claire.
You're welcome.
I'll be there as soon as I can get there.
Eli's response will probably be something like, where do I sign? Right?
Something similar, yeah.
Yeah. And how about you, Joe?
Probably not interested.
So,
Yeah.
So you don't think it's a good deal?
It could be a good deal. It's just not a good deal for me.
Sure.
It's not really what I'm looking for. Maybe 10 or 15 years ago, but I'm just not what I'm looking for.
What you're doing.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think that's the really important thing that we want to try and get across tonight is different times. Different things are going to work for different people.
That's right. Eli, what would you do if you would get a call for some reason? Somebody has a mid-sized self-storage facility in Tennessee, mom and pop owned. They've had it for 25 years, just looking for a fair price, want to get rid of it. What would you do?
I would tell him to call my good friend Steve Cavanaugh.
So you don't.
No offense, Claire, but that's what I would do.
So even if it's a good deal, you wouldn't want a good deal?
I don't know how to manage self-storage remotely.
It's a good deal, Eli.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I probably should think about it. But no, I would pass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I'm really trying to do is just kind of driving home the point of like, you got to kind of find the lane and stick to it. Not entirely. I mean, I feel like I've always kind of been somewhat of an opportunist, and I like that, but still just to a degree. You can't go chasing everything else that's out there. And that's why I think about that when somebody says, well, hey, is this a good deal? Like, should I buy this? Do you think it's a good deal? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what you're looking for. It's actually, I almost forgot about this, but it's kind of like saying, Joe, I want to buy a new vehicle. What do you think? Should I buy a Prius or should I buy a F-350? What's a good vehicle? Or should I buy a minivan or a Sprinter van? Like, what's a good vehicle? And Joe's going to be like, what do you want to do with it? I mean, I want to go places, sure, but what do you really want to do with it? So, Claire, why don't you start by giving us a kind of a rundown, take a few minutes, tell us about maybe even how you got into self-storage, some of the good things that you're seeing about that, and also, if you want to, some of the things that you see kind of coming down the pike there.
So my adventure in self-storage involved a trucking company I owned, and we were out of space to park trucks. There was a small self-storage facility adjacent to me. They had one or two buildings sitting on a couple acres. I need an acre to park trucks, so I contacted the owner, and he said, hey, for a lot of different reasons, we want to sell the entire property, and there's a mobile home park beside it. I was always interested in mobile home parks, and didn't care about the self-storage. I had to buy the whole bundle, which I did. About a year into it, I'm like, you know what, this self-storage is a little bit more fun than mobile home parks, a little less drama, and that's how we got started. So I've been 25 years in self-storage. I did, 5 years ago, I had 5 asset classes. I had self-storage, laundromats, car washes, apartments, and what's the other one? Oh, mobile home parks. And my sons came into the business about 3 years ago, and we just decided it was time to focus, become great at 1 or 2 asset classes instead of good at 5. And self-storage went to the top of the list. Perfect timing. This was pre-COVID. I don't think when we came into COVID, I was pretty sure we were all done. I didn't see any way through that for any business. It ended up self-storage benefited more than almost any asset class that I'd been in. So we had done 1031 exchanges then. We're now in, I think, 9 or 10 states, mid-20s on facilities. And you mentioned Tennessee as the self-storage. Tennessee is one of my favorite states to do business in, incredibly business-friendly. Self-storage is a real simple thing. We look at about 15 a week, and we always start out with demographics. You're looking for 7 square feet per person within a 5-mile radius. If you want to take anything away tonight from self-storage, that's how simple this business is. If you find a 5-mile radius and it's less than 7 square feet, you're probably going to win. If it's above it, you're going to have to fight hard. So population growth is important to us. Those demographics are important. And my favorite asset class by far.
That's good. If you guys have questions as we're going here, jot them down. There'll be probably multiple opportunities to ask some questions. So, Eli.
Jake, so I forgot to mention, but one of the conditions for me being up here tonight is no Q&A.
No Q&A.
No Q&A. And it's not that I don't like people. It's just that to share how I feel, I'm going to share a story that I read in the Fish Wrapper recently. So there was this group of hunters, and they went on a guided hunt. And this was in Colorado. And they were up in the mountains and got lost. And this guide was taking them all over the mountains, trying to get them back on track. And finally, the hunters were fed up. They said, "You told us you were the best guide in Colorado." "I am," he said, "but I think we're in Wyoming now." And that's kind of how I feel with real estate. Like, it's a little hard to figure some things out. So, but Q&A is good. That was just kind of a joke. So.
That's good. So, Eli, tell us a little bit about single-family homes. I mean, and just to be clear, Eli is not strictly limited to single-family homes and 2 units. He has done some larger stuff, but would it be fair to say that your sweet spot, most of what you have done is single-family homes and multi-units?
Yeah, that's my bread and butter. That's what I consider myself to be pretty good at, and I really enjoy that asset class for a large number of reasons. Yeah, so one of them being I started from scratch, and so I started from scratch, and I don't know that I could have bought a $10 million self-storage facility on my first purchase, or a 40 mobile home park on my first purchase. But I was able to buy a single-family home, and that literally changed my life with what I was able to do with that. So I have a big appreciation for the availability that single-family homes offer, and the opportunity that they present. And I think it's, as Jake mentioned earlier, I think it's one of the things where you can get to a point in your life where maybe you want to move on to bigger things. Maybe you want to chase down, $10 million assets or whatever. and now you can. But I had to start somewhere, and I started with single-family homes, and still enjoy that quite a bit, and have developed some pretty good systems, have a lot of friends. Jake, I hope it's all right if I brought some of my friends along. So I have a lot of friends. A lot of you in the room are my friends, and then I also have some books here that I want to share and recommend. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad back when I was unemployed, didn't have steady work, and had $89 in my checking account. I read this book, and I came to realize that they print money every day. The government will never stop printing money. I also came to realize that I don't need to have money to get started in real estate. When I was young, I thought I would have real estate when I was 50 and filthy rich, and then I could afford real estate. And reading the book made me realize that you don't need money. If you can find a seller financing deal and stick to your commitments, make your payments, deal well with people, you can get started with no money down. So that was the one book that I read when I was unemployed that really changed my life. And the other one was The Slight Edge. Highly recommend these two books. And so, yeah, The Slight Edge is actually not really about real estate or even that much about money, but it's more about the principle of what your choices that you make today, how they will affect you 10, 15, 20 years down the road. And it further incentivized me to start, even though I felt like I have not much to start with, and that the things I didn't really seem to make a difference that day. I read the book, and I came to for sure believe that the actions I take will make a difference 10 years from now, and they surely have. A few other books that I really like, The One Thing, and seems like it actually works because the three of us up here kind of have gotten good at one thing, and we like it. Another one is Intentional Living by John Maxwell. I'm a big fan of John Maxwell, so this is probably not saying a whole lot, but this book here is one of his better ones, and I highly recommend you read it. And the books that I mentioned up to here are not for sale, but this one here, you can get a copy of this on the back table. There's a couple copies available, $20 a piece. Just put the $20 in the box there. This book is kind of like the Chicken Soup for the Soul. It has a collection of stories, and my story is on page 266. They only gave me 3 pages, and so I decided next time I have to write the whole book because it was kind of hard to get a good story in 3 pages, but it gives you a little glimpse into how I got started. Again, these books are available on the back table. And yeah, so what was the question here? Oh, how we got started. So yeah, so I got started in 2010 with real estate. So we got married in 2008, and 2009, the recession hit. A lot of you young guys don't even know what that is. But for me, it meant I got a call Saturday night saying that we have had some large projects get canceled. There is no work for you Monday. And my family lived 500 miles away. I did not grow up in Lanchester County, and I had no clue what I was going to do on Monday morning. That's what recessions mean to me, and that's by default how I got started with real estate. Is now a good time to share a couple of stories about the reasons and the.
Let's hang on to those if you don't mind. We'll keep going.
That's great.
But we will
That's
get
great.
to your stories.
So that's how I got started.
Yeah, that's good. Joe, mobile home parks, you didn't start there. How did you get there, and what's so great about mobile home parks?
Yeah, I did not start there. I had single-family rentals, several 4 units. I was kind of working my way up to get scalability. And somebody that I've known for years actually stopped in at the office and kind of knew that I was looking. And that's something I would encourage you all to do. Let everybody you know that you're looking. Whatever it is you're looking for, let them know, because you never know where your next deal is going to come from. So bought the first park, didn't really know what I was doing, but I had a property management company, so I was somewhat insulated from the problems. Bought the park and everything went well. We made it a 55-plus community. It was full, we didn't have much to do. And in a matter of a few months, I'm thinking, man, this is really what I want to do. Started selling my single family in 4 units, bought another one, and bought a third one. Looking for my fourth one, I lost out on a really sweet deal by somebody with a lot of money because they put down $250,000 hard. I didn't even know what that meant. That meant they're buying it or they're walking away from $250,000. That was not something I could compete with. However, I do know how to learn. And when the deal in Lidditz came up and they wanted to get rid of it, and every deal I bought, I got to deal with the owner. And their biggest concern was they wanted to sell it. They didn't want a tire kicker. They wanted to sell it. They wanted to sell it. Ding, how did I lose the last deal? Hard money. So I swallowed deep. I told them I'd give them $100,000 hard. I'm buying the place as long as everything you told me is true. Here is a check for $100,000. They originally started at $2 million. I ended up getting it for $1 million. And even the day I bought it, it appraised at 1.4. I don't know. Usually, it almost always appraises what you buy it for. It almost never appraises for higher. So anyway, dealing with seller financing, dealing with some people who want to get out of the asset, having all tenant-owned homes and just owning the dirt was just something I got really excited about. So I only own, I don't know, I might own like 4 or 5 other properties right now, a 2-unit, a single. I did sell my office. It was over $1 million reasons why, but I sold my office. That only lasted about 4 or 5 months. I don't like being a tenant, so I did just buy another office. So I do have a commercial property that I'll be using as an office. But other than that, it's mobile home parks.
So let's pretend some of these people don't know anything about owning a mobile home park and renting out a plot of ground for someone to pull their mobile home in, hook up to your water and sewer. How does all that work? And how much do you get paid for that?
It can be a little bit complicated, if it's a heavy lift or if it needs a lot of work. So the first one I bought was full, so it was easy. The water, sewer, and trash was already there. The next one I bought was a project, so I got to learn a lot hands-on working with water and sewer lines. So typically in Chester County, you're probably going to be about $500 a month for lot rent. I would highly suggest that you meter the water, even if it's well water, or if there's a septic system, because you want them paying for the water. They're going to be more conservative with the water if they're paying for it. So, you're hooking up water, sewer, and electric, and then that's it. You're responsible for the utilities, whether they're in the ground or aerial, but pretty much from the ground up, it's on them. So no more calls that the water heater broke or the air conditioning doesn't work or the roof leaks. That's all on them, and that's why I like it. It is a little different than having a tenant in an apartment. If a tenant in an apartment doesn't pay, you go and file landlord-tenant. If you do everything right, in 30 or 40 days, you can get them out. With a mobile home park, they own their home. So they're tenants, but they're also owners, they're residents, and there's a complete different set of rules, Act 251 or 261, that you better get familiar with and follow, because it can be a much longer process to get somebody out. So the one park I have is on autopilot. I haven't done anything there literally for a year. There was a water leak. We did have to have the backhoe go out and fix a water leak. But if you take care of it and do it right, it can be very, very low maintenance. If you don't, and if you have trouble with your tenants, it can get ugly. So management and knowing that the tenants are owners, it's a little bit different mentality. So that's probably the biggest thing that's different from long-term rentals.
In Claire's industry, self-storage is pretty easy if someone doesn't pay their rent. Claire told me he just goes up to the unit, kicks the door open, sells their stuff. I also noticed he walked in on crutches, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's up with that. But so along those lines, anybody have any questions for any of these guys at the moment here? Paul?
I was wondering if Claire could give an example of some things that would fall under cost segregation in the storage space.
As much as possible, can you repeat the question for the sake of people in the
Yeah,
back?
so the question is what factors into cost segregation in self-storage?
What kind of items and assets, actually?
You know, I hire professionals to take care of all that. I look for the highest percentage, and we push back. So we're pushing 35%. Segregate. It's a very simple facility if you think about it. We've got a gate system. I know the doors are a different asset class, and they chunk those down. I don't know how they get 35%. I write a check, and I'm happy, and hopefully it passes an audit if I ever get in one. So wish I had more detail, but I don't. I focus on the things that I can control. That's one I can't. We just...
If I must stop by a place, I'll look for all the short-term stuff.
There you go. It's a very, very simple facility. I mean, we've got buildings and doors and a lot of steel, excuse me?
The fencing?
The fencing, yeah, lighting systems, video cameras. I mean, they get a breakdown on everything. I've never looked how they push it up to 35%. What I do know is we can get cost segs on the largest self-storage facilities for around $2,000. That's extremely cost-effective compared to what I would pay for a $100,000 apartment building. So it's a no-brainer for me. We do it on every single one. We've even, I wasn't aware of cost segs maybe 3 years ago, 5 years ago. First time we heard about it, I fired my accountant immediately when I found out about it because he should have told me. What I do know is it was even cost-effective to go back to facilities that I owned for multiple years because of those numbers and still hit it and get that depreciation immediately.
Yeah. Good question.
I got to concede to Claire, self-storage units aren't horrible. I have them in 2 of my parks. We got mobile units, I think 16 in one and maybe like 12 in the other, some 10 by 10, some 5 by 10s. And they're not anchored to the ground. They're mobile units. So that was first year write-off. So for any of you that have a little place somewhere where you think you could do a little self-storage, it might be a great place to get into something like this. For $15,000 or $20,000, you can buy a 10 by 40 or 10 by 50. They'll come in and plunk it down. It's got the roll-up doors, and then you get a first-year write-off because it's not real estate. It's it's mobile.
That's a great point. I helped a couple of you in here get started. A couple of you came up and said, hey, I have some garages I'm donating to my tenants. That's $100 a month for a garage. And so self-storage, again, is incredibly scalable. When I owned mobile home parks, we actually purchased 10 by 12 sheds. We bought them and leased them back to the tenant and put it on their site.
Oh, okay.
That was my original venture into self-storage. So it's very scalable. You can get started very small, cut your teeth on it, and then you get up to the larger assets where there's economies of scale, where the numbers really start hitting.
Anybody else with a question now? We can save it for later as well. Eli, maybe now is a good time to share some stories that you had.
Yeah, sure. So there's, like I mentioned, a lot of reasons that I'm really passionate about the opportunities that single-family homes provide. And so I have a couple of stories that I believe will help make my case, since that's kind of what we're doing up here tonight. So the first one is a story of a gentleman that I met just recently, and I wish Santo were here because he can tell his story a lot better than I can. But he's 87 years old, and he wants to take life easy now. So I guess we'll let him off. But Santo came over from Italy when he was 25, and that was about 1961. And he didn't know the language. He came over to America because it's the land of the dream, And so he started out working. We know how to work, right? And that's what he did. He worked. and he learned, and he was making $70 an hour. Excuse me, a week. Was it a week? Yeah, $70 a week. That's what it was. And soon he realized that, he needs to do something more than just work, because all his money disappeared. Anyone, you get that feeling? You work and your money just disappears. So he looked around and he noticed that the people that do well are the people that have real estate. But he didn't have, history here. Bankers wouldn't lend him the money. So he was like, what do we do? So he saved up some money and he bought 125 Ruby Street in Lanchester. The purchase price was $12,500 and the seller did seller financing. And he rented out 125 Ruby Street for $63 a month. And he 1961. $63 a month was his rent. And he thought this was great, that his tenant will make the payment on his house that he gets to keep. And 125 Ruby Street is a nice house, wood floors, 3-story brick. And that's how he got started. And over the years, he kept buying some more until he had like 14 or 15 properties. He always self-managed. His wife took care of the books because she understood the language better than he did, and he took care of the maintenance because he knows how to work. And that's a small glimpse into the into the opportunities that real estate provides to somebody that doesn't know the language well, to somebody that can't get a bank loan, and to somebody that is willing to work hard. To me, that was just such a cool story. Now he's 87 years old, and he couldn't stop talking about how thankful he is for the opportunity that he had to get the insight that he needs to buy some real estate. He doesn't know what to do with all his money anymore, and so that's why he's doing seller financing on the 4-unit he's selling me next in the next couple of weeks, because he's not really sure what else he would do with it anyway. But he didn't want the management anymore. He still self-managed, and this was his last one. And he said, I'm trusting you. I'm leaving the money in, not because I have to. I'm leaving the money in not because you have to have the money, but I'm leaving the money in because that's what was the opportunity that was given to me, and people trusted me, and now I will trust you. I thought that was just really touching. He said, people trusted me, and I did the right thing, and now I trust people to do the right thing too. So I thought that was just a really, really cool story that we could all resonate with. Here's somebody that, by the book, shouldn't have gotten far in life, making $70 a week, and, can't get a bank loan, doesn't have rich family that will, buy him a house or even provide his down payment, like a lot of us, can do that. We have a dad or whatever. So that was really cool. And another story that I have is my story. So I didn't have, a lot to get started with either. And I started in 2010. I was able to buy my first flip, and I started by flipping houses, quick cash, and so we saved up some money. And the first 10 or 12 properties I bought were completely without bank financing. Not that I didn't want bank financing, but they didn't. Lending was pretty tight right over that time. 2010 was right after the recession, and their lending limits were tight. I was gainfully unemployed, didn't have a W-2 to show them, didn't have 2 years of self-employed tax returns, and so I was able to do it via, first it was private money lending through my dad's friend, and then seller financing. I bought 7 rental properties straight from one owner, seller financing. And then finally I was able to qualify for a bank loan of $22,500. They started small, trust me. But I had made a commitment before I got married that I would always pay my bills on time, every time. And so whatever it took, my payments were made. And the banks recognized that that seems to be something they appreciate. And I don't know that I don't remember that I necessarily told them that that's what I would do, other than when you sign on the line. But it was a commitment that I had made. And so even though back in the early days when I was flipping houses, I would lose money on. I was shocked later to realize I lost money on about 10% of my flips. Sometimes it wasn't much. Sometimes it was more than just a little bit. But either way, whenever I lost money, it was me that learned. I never called my investors and said, hey, look, I guess if you're going to want your money, you're going to have to sue me or whatever. I paid, and I was the one that learned and adjusted. But that's how hungry I was to get out of my hole. I had recognized that if I just work for a paycheck, I will never get ahead because the expenses, they keep going up. And how can you buy, a $300,000 home? This was back in 2010, 9, 10, whatever. How can you buy a $300,000 home if you don't have $60,000 to put down as a down payment? I didn't have the money. And so I knew I had to do something, and real estate provided me that opportunity. And I always will be very grateful for having the opportunity to get started, and for being in a community where we're willing to help each other. And somewhere along the line, I met Jeff Moeller. I'd say that was 2011-ish, yeah. And I was really going to go big time about then, and going to buy 7 units in York. But I didn't have the money. Yeah, that's an interesting topic there, not having the money. But so I called Jeff, and he said, well, I'm not sure. And I said, yeah, but it's a great deal, and it's, they're cheap and whatever. And he was like, it's like, yeah, I'm not sure. And it took him a little while before he could be blunt enough to tell me that I really don't want to buy this deal. And here it turns out that the agent that was selling was actually, he was actually part owner in the properties, and I would have been paying full price plus for these properties that at that stage in my career I'm not sure if they would have put me under, because I had a couple of success stories under my belt already. I probably would have kept going, but it really, really would have put a hurt on me, because I would have lost a lot of money. And so along the way, I met some really good friends, and so grateful for the opportunity that single-family homes and real estate have provided. Another story. So I have a brother, Ephraim, who lived in Indiana close to my parents. And we grew up on a farm, and I love farming. He loves farming. And I traded in my farming dream here a while back, but he never did. But he also realized that farms are expensive, and wasn't quite sure how to do this. I said, well, just start buying some real estate. And out in Indiana, he could buy real estate for cheap. So he ended up buying a total of around 20 rental properties. And then here in 2021, he traded them all in and bought a nice 344-acre property that he would have not been able to buy without getting started with what he could with where he was at. So yeah, that was a neat little story that here he was able to pursue his dream. It took some time, 10 years, of buying, the clunkers, the dirty, you know what I'm talking about, the dirty single-family homes that just, they've got the dog urine all over, they've got dog number 2 all over, they've got the dirty carpets, the windows are broken, the raccoons are living up in the attic, the roof is sagging, and he tackled that stuff. Not because he wanted to be in that environment, but he was chasing the dream, and he was willing to buckle up his sleeves and tackle that sloping roof and evict in his words, evict the tenants he's got in his attic. And he was doing that stuff because he had a dream, and he was able to chase that dream by using real estate. So
That's good. So where did the Ruby Street property end up? Did he sell that property?
he sold it at some point, yeah. But it's interesting to me. I was just running some quick numbers. I'm buying right across the street, so that one he only owned for 30 years. But Ruby Street he owned for a lot longer period than that. But it was interesting to me how you could pretty much multiply his numbers by 25, and they would still kind of hold out, you know. So 25 times 63 is whatever, 1,500 or whatever, and that might be a little on the low side for that house. And then on value, you would be at right around 280, 290-ish, and that's right about where we're at. So if you want to stop and think where you might be at in about 60 years, for the ones that are younger than 50, just think about what your portfolio might look like if you just took it times 25. I'm not saying it'll happen. I'm not saying you want to base your business plan on this, but it's interesting to me how the inflation that we're seeing today, it feels new to us, and it kind of is, because we never experienced this kind of inflation before, but it's not a new thing in the big scheme of history.
That's right. Let's actually tackle that a little bit. So, of course, everybody sitting here can agree that buying something for $12,000, Ruby Street, it's a good area for those of you that don't know. It's like how could you not do that? That's easy, right? But we're sitting here thinking, well, but with the way prices are now, like prices are high, stuff is hardly cash flowing, interest rates are going up, like that's a good story, but what if I want to get started today and it's like, man, is this a good time? Claire, let's have your input on that question.
Yeah, so just quick show of hands. Next 2 years harder than the last two. Anybody think that's about to happen?
Harder in what?
More difficult to make money in real estate would be what we're focusing on tonight. I believe the next 2 years are going to be harder than the last two, but I still believe it's one of the greatest games in town. In a recession, I've identified 3 different asset classes that are non-negotiable. I pulled back on self-storage a little bit, by the way, because it is a discretionary expense. It's not necessary. If things get tight, they can get rid of me, but they can't get rid of 3 things: food, housing, and energy. So I need to eat, I need to consume energy to heat my house, drive my car, and I need a place to live. So I am repositioning part of my portfolio on that. But I'll throw something out to you real quick. In self-storage, we make between 20 and 50% per year, depending on how lucky I get in that asset. I don't know residential, but it's stronger than anything else. If I could borrow money 2 years ago at 3.5%, and I could make 20 to 50% on a good deal, yes. Today I got to pay 7.5%. I'm still going to make 20 or 50%. Good deal? Yeah. Put it in perspective. These are not historically high. I didn't live long enough to see double digit, but I had friends who were in the business, 17% mortgage rates. I don't know how they did it. So let's not get too crazy about the fact, yes, we doubled interest rates, but that margin is still a great investment.
Joe, what do you think? Prices are high. Is it still a good time to get started?
Absolutely. Buy that house for $12,000, and inflation's going to stick around for forever. With mobile home, if you find a mobile home park, it could have a big price tag. If you find one with 100 units, and you're probably going to be spending $5 million. If you can reduce the expense per lot by $50 a month, so maybe you put in water meters and you send that bill back to the tenants, and you raise rents $50 if it's a mom and pop and they haven't been keeping up with inflation, and that difference is $100 per unit per month. On a 100-lot park, that's $10,000 a month. That's $120,000 a year. I bet there's more than one person in here that's not making $120,000 a year. So what would it be worth to you to go find that deal? And what would it be worth to find Jeff Moeller or somebody else to lend you 70 or 80% of it and beg, borrow, or steal the other 20 or 30% from friends or family? So read the books, talk to people that have been there and done that. And I mean, to me, that's a home run. And Eli, Eli's over here talking about getting a single, just get on base. And that absolutely makes sense. I've used the analogy, it doesn't have to be a home run, it could be a single for your first deal. Hell, lean into a pitch and get hit, just get on base somehow, buy something, and you'll start learning. But when you think about, when Claire raises the rents on 300 units, man, that adds up to a lot of money fast. So you can't do that if you don't have it. Maybe you're going to pay a little bit more with interest rates. If it's cash flowing today, buy it.
Sure. Agreed. Claire, what did you actually get started with? I don't think I even know. Tell us a little bit about your earliest investing days. How did you get started with investing in real estate?
So it goes back to that trucking company and needing some land. I had a trucking company, one of the 13 hardest years of my life. My wife's sitting back there, she would concur. And we just knew we didn't want to do that forever. But that was really what it came down to. I needed some land to park trucks. I was always interested in real estate. Actually looked at some long-term rental opportunities before that. But I liked the idea of not having the late night calls for hot water heaters. So mobile home parks was actually what I was focused on. But ended up just God's sense of humor, ended up with mobile home park and a self-storage, and was complete. My plan, by the way, was to subdivide it, sell the self-storage off, and take off with mobile home parks. Instead, for about 20 years, I let both those investments coexist. But then self-storage, just so many different reasons. We just enjoyed it. The world chose it, and it was a growth industry, and that's how we ended up here.
And where do you think it's gone now? You've been talking about that a little bit.
So who went through 07, 08? Were you an investor back then? It was an interesting time. I owned self-storage back then. I also owned the other asset classes. And self-storage outperformed everything else I had. And now looking back historically, it outperformed almost every other asset class. That makes me not fear a recession, but this one is going to be different for self-storage. A year ago, we peaked. July of 2015 was a peak in the self-storage industry for valuations. We were getting offers of 4 and 5 caps for our properties, and we decided to take a third of it off the table. I just thought that was too big to resist. Part of that concern was this next recession. In 07, 08, self-storage benefited for a couple different reasons. We benefit when people downsize. So if somebody like yourself was in a nice home but lost their jobs, they would try to downsize. They would store their stuff until they got the job back, got back on their feet. Secondly, they would relocate for jobs during a recession. The housing market today is changing that. There's no inventory. So if I want to downsize out of my 4-bedroom house to apartment, I probably can't find it, and I'm still going to pay a lot. So they're sticking it out. And relocation, because now remote jobs are more of a possibility. We're seeing less and less. So self-storage will not benefit as much during this recession as we did before. I think it's going to be a little weaker than the last time, but still a strong asset class. But we're just pivoting a little bit. By the end of this year, I'll be 60% self-storage, and 40% my portfolio will be in some other asset classes.
Questions from you guys?
Do you mind sharing what the other 40% is? Sectional?
Yeah, so the question was, what's the other 40% going to be? I feel like I have a new job figuring that out. I was 95% self-storage 2 years ago, and we had that game down, and I got a great team. Felt like I was semi-retired. And then when we sold them off, I got a new job. I got to figure out how to redeploy. I answered part of that question earlier with 3 asset classes. In a recession, food, housing, and energy. On the energy side, loving natural gas. I invest with Dave Zook. A lot of you guys know him. Fantastic returns on that. Great depreciation, which is important to me right now. Housing, I'm getting back into long-term rentals again. We're buying apartments. Don't think I'm going to get back into mobile home parks. He got that covered. I don't want to compete. But that would be a great asset class. I haven't figured out the food part. I said food, energy, and housing. I might just skip that one. But yeah, that 40%, playing in some Bitcoin. I think 5 to 10% of a portfolio, everybody should be in that just for the story. That's going to be an interesting story, part of our history. But the rest of it, fairly conservative, and it is, for me, it is completely passive. I don't want to manage any of that stuff. So our long-term rentals, we have a management company for that. Certainly natural gas, I know nothing about it. Those are all passive. So writing checks for the other 40% and hoping some great people out there give me a good return. Good question.
Anybody else? Not right now? Sorry. Go ahead. Is a mobile storage shed 100% write-off?
Yeah, in the first year, yeah. So,
Might be changing this year. Bonus depreciation 80%. Am I right? Yeah.
Yeah, so the question was about mobile storage. By the way, we do them on almost every location with our existing buildings. It's a real gray area. Townships don't like it, but I haven't seen any of them sophisticated enough to stop it. We got a cease and desist order one time from 50 miles from here, one of the facilities I own. And my sons were worried. The letter was pretty forceful, the way townships do, and they were pretty sure we're getting killed. We had 20, we call them portable units, 20 portable units on site, and we had 30 days to move them or start getting fined daily. 2 years later, after just playing nice with them, and 2 years later they decided they wanted $15 per unit of a permit fee. Would we be willing to pay that? Yes, we'd be willing to pay that. So, and the other beauty, I don't know if you mentioned it, no property tax. This is not real estate. They really need to tighten it up. I'm shocked they haven't, but a lot of self-storage owners, we are putting as much of them as we can. And by the way, we can put them right on the property line, no setbacks. So as long as they're portable, it's a great idea. And yeah, without bonus depreciation, I think you're back to 80% this year, but still a great deal. But you can get involved in that self-storage industry. If you own a house with a little space in the backyard, get in. You can put a portable right there and start charging monthly.
Yeah, good question. Anybody else? Sam?
So if you put the portable storage units in, does that specifically, could that be an issue if you rent it to outside sources other than just your tenants on that property?
That's a great question. The question is, can you rent to outside sources other than the property? I think you are so far below the radar, I'd be shocked if you ever get contacted. Honestly, I think it would probably take a neighbor complaining about the new building. I don't know what radar you would be on. You're not creating a big website about self-storage. I just don't see how that would be an issue. Who you rent it to, who you collect from. You're talking about $100, $150 a month transaction. And you start stacking them up, you're going to draw somebody's attention. That would be a different story. But yeah, I don't see why. Anybody have experience with that? Renting outside? Yeah, so the comment, I agree. Don't make it public. Rent that thing somehow a little bit under the radar. Any township officials here? You're going to need to leave. Just step out for a few minutes. We'll change the topic soon.
Anybody else? Kevin?
Question for Joe. A while ago, I thought it'd be fun to buy a mobile home.
Try this one. Some batteries over here.
okay.
Actually, check. Now we're good.
There we go. Musical mics. Sometimes you just have to pursue them too. Usually if it's a broker, you're not going to get a great deal. It's going to be retail. But one deal was they had scoped the sewer lines, and the sewer lines were shot, and they wouldn't buy it without having the seller replace them. The seller spent $100,000 replacing sewer lines, and then the deal fell through anyway. So we got that right when they came right back on the market, because I was already looking at it. I had a little bit of a relationship with the broker, and I just would follow up with them every once in a while. So as soon as it fell through, we were standing there. But they're tough to find. I mean, yeah, they are tough to find. There's a website called Crexi, C-R-E-X-I, and LoopNet. You can find some of them there, but there's only 40,000 of them in the whole country. So, yeah, they're tough. There's one out in Abbottstown in York. Go buy that one. It's $1 million. It's got it's 4.5 acres. It's got about 2 acres of impervious surface. So if somebody wants to put a used car lot, it's a mobile home sales lot now. But I looked at it. It's not a horrible deal, but it's just a little bit, it's about an hour away.
It's good. Well, go ahead.
Is there any land being developed for zoning for new trailer parks?
That'd be a good question for Scott Rhodes. I think he sold that property in Honeybrook. I don't remember the purchase price. It was expensive. They're going to have to be $700 a month lot rent when they're done. It's just cost prohibitive. I don't know how many.
Are municipalities allowing new ones? Are they putting new ones in?
Some will if it's zoned for it, but there's so few. And then, you know, I don't know how many guys deal with townships, but man, it's tough. You know, Quarryville Sewer Authority, I tried to expand a park down there, and just engineering fees, and I spent, I don't know, a lot of money, $20,000-$30,000, and I just gave up. I said, forget it. They were literally spending, their engineer was spending more than my engineer. My engineer was doing the work, giving it to them for them to review it. They were spending more money reviewing his work. And, you know, there's impervious surface and drain and run. You're gonna spend a lot of money building a new park today. So I think it's infinitely easier to buy an old one, no matter what kind of shape it's in. It could be horrible shape. It's gonna be infinitely easier than building one from scratch.
In my experience in that realm, and then also friends who are still in it, townships do not like them. Neighbors will fight them. It's an uphill battle. However, one little twist on it you may want to look at. I've got some friends who are very successful right now with tiny home communities. They look incredibly like a mobile home park, but they're kind of new and cool, and they're getting less headwind with those. So maybe that's an opportunity.
That's good. Okay, we'll save hopefully a little bit of time at the end for a few more questions. Let's shift a little bit here and talk about why we do what we do. So you guys have all been doing this for a while. You really wouldn't have to do it anymore. Start with you, Joe. What gets you up in the morning? Why would you buy another mobile home park? Like, when is it enough?
I used to say I used to play Monopoly as a kid, and I liked doing it. To me, a mobile home park is the best example of doing that. You really get to change the community.
Even just the investing in general, like how much more do you need?
Well, yeah.
Why do you keep going?
That's,
I'm not saying you should.
That's
just tell us why you do.
No, that's a really good topic, one that I struggle with, because, yeah, how much is enough? You know, when do you stop? And it's tough, because for the first few years, I wasn't making any money. I don't know. You said you lost money on 1 out of 10 deals. You were probably making money fairly early. Was there a learning curve? You got to figure it out now. You used to. I don't know. I almost feel like it's so easy now. You know, I used to struggle, and now, I mean, I mean, the one I love, the Park and Lit. It's just fun. But I also wrote a non-refundable $100,000 check. I couldn't do that 20 or 30 years ago. But in the long run, I mean, it saved me $1 million because I was able to do that. So if another deal comes in, I almost feel obligated to do it. I did drive out to that one in Abbottstown or Abbotsville, wherever it is. It's right on Route 30 in York. Not a bad deal. You know, I probably only look about one a week, because there's not that many, and I kind of want to stay close to home. But I don't know. Why do I still do it? I don't know. The thrill of the chase, I guess.
How about you, Eli? What keeps you going?
So one of the things that keeps me going is I have big dreams, and one of the first things that was on my to-do list when I got started was I wanted the ability to pay my bills. So I came from a family that was not always the case, and I wanted to choose a different path for my family. So it's interesting to me how things change. So as that was accomplished, then it became a bigger goal. So lately, I have found what gets me passionate about real estate is not so much just the money. I find my goals shifting more towards serving others. and being a part of the community and helping make the community a better place. So I guess to clarify a little bit on that, so getting to meet somebody like Santo Iacano, who has this great story, and he could sell to any of you guys with a realtor if that's what he wanted to do. But he values personal relationships, and he knows his tenants like I know my neighbors, and I have been in business since 2010 now, and I know a lot of people. So I value those relationships, and I recognize that I can connect a lot of dots. So I see some areas of, say, Lanchester City that I believe are really up and coming, and there are some opportunities that come up there that I wouldn't have to purchase, but I believe in the future of that specific block. And so I take on the project, and I get up 2 months later and I'm like, why did I do that? I didn't need this work. For some reason, right about then, I come across a contractor who's like, man, it's just been tough finding work these days. And I'm like, yeah, I think I have a project you could work on. That is very rewarding to me. So I don't know if that just totally answers your question, but that's a big part of what gets me going these days. Yes, sure.
Kind of to bounce off of what he was saying, at one of the parks, I have somebody who's there almost every day working on something, and he's really good about getting people in the community involved. And it was right before, I guess it was Memorial Day. He would go around it, and he would always pick up the trash, and he was encouraging to fix their homes. And we tore down a bunch of sheds. We should have rented them out. No, they were shy. We were spending a lot of time cleaning up the park. And right before Memorial Day, he was telling me he was walking across the field with one of them, and the tenant bent down to pick up a piece of trash. And I was like, yes, they're buying in, they're going to start being responsible. They're liking the community they're in. And then for the first time ever, 3 or 4 people got together on one of the empty lots there, and they had a little picnic. And there were people that had lived there for 20 years that didn't even know who their neighbor was. So having a little bit of an impact on the community, and kind of not forcing people together, but giving them a good reason to get together, that really put a smile on my face.
Claire, how about you? And this may or may not tie into it, but you had a little bit of a mishap on a ski slope in Utah a number of months ago. I'm sure that has changed how you have thought of some things in the last couple of months. So talk to us about all of that.
It changed my mind about picking fights with mountains. They often win. So, yeah, a skiing accident 4.5 months ago, and it was tough, but part of the journey, and you learn something from everything. My answer is really simple. First of all, you guys have probably heard the old real estate quote, I don't need to own all the land, just the land next to me. That would have driven me for a number of years, but at some point, like Joe, things change. It gets easier or something. My world changed dramatically 18 months ago when my first grandchild was born. We have a beautiful granddaughter. And I believe every word in the Bible, even the maps, I think is a quote. And one of the things the Bible tells us is that as a godly man, I'm responsible for 2 generations. I got my kids covered. That's been an amazing journey. My sons are in business. They're godly men. They're strong business people, everything I wanted. This granddaughter threw me in a little bit of a turn here. That's 70 years out I got to be thinking about now. This, by the way, I don't think the Bible meant financial. It's everything. I want her to grow up with all the opportunities I had. I want her to grow up in an amazing country, and I have concerns about where it's going. So the rest of my life, every day, is laser focused on one thing. I don't want this to sound greedy, but I believe the world would be a better place if more people like us, and I include this entire room, more people like us control the world's wealth. That's wealth as a tool. It's not meant to be greedy, but that money can change the trajectory of our country, anywhere from politics to helping the poor. It is an amazing tool. and I am laser focused for the rest of my days that God allows me on this planet to help other people that have similar beliefs like I do create and control that wealth, because I do believe it would be a better world to live in. So that's what it's about for me.
That's good. So, so we're getting pretty close to time to wrap it up here. I want to hear from each of you guys. What advice would you, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give? You could call it your 20-year-old self when you were trying to figure this out, or there was probably people in the room maybe trying to get started, thinking, wishing they could get started, but you see all the risks and you've never done it. What's your advice for a beginner?
Real quick and easy, obviously, buy real estate. And then I think a mistake that I made was I wasn't consistent. I bought some real estate before I got married and had children, and kind of put things on hold, kind of started again, and then they were teenagers and kind of stopped. I would say just be consistent. If you can buy 2 properties a year for 20 years, it'll absolutely change your family and the next generation. You don't have to do anything crazy, but just be consistent. Be consistent. I think that's what I would tell myself. Don't allow those gap years to happen. Just be consistent.
So I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to go to the list that I have in my story here. These are 5 pieces of advice that I believe can change your life if you're not already practicing them. So the 5 success habits that I live by: be friendly and value relationships. So I used to think that for a successful transaction, I had to win. And that didn't change, but I used to think that meant the other person would lose. And in real, I've found that for there to be real value for everybody, that's not the case. In a real good transaction, we all win. Another thing with be friendly and value relationships is I tend to, the last couple of years, I tend to watch what people do and not so much what they say. And then I kind of place value in relationships based on that. Another one, and this one has been huge for me, is be optimistic. It's much easier to spot opportunity if you believe it's there. If you leave this room and say interest rates are 8%, they're not building enough houses, there's not enough around, I can't find any houses, I'm sure you're going to come back next month and hoping that this time the speaker will give you the easy answers that you can just find real estate and get rich or whatever you want to do with it. The third piece of advice is be resilient. The tough times will come for beginning investors. Bounce back. I got hit over the head many times, and there were times where I wondered if this is worth the fight. But I had big dreams, and I knew that if I gave up, my dreams would have zero chance of getting fulfilled. So just know that you listen to these stories, it's easy for you to get the idea that life was just always easy for Joe, for Eli, and for Claire. I can assure you it was not. The reason we don't talk about them so much is because while there are a lot of lessons to be learned, we tend to find it more inspiring to listen to the good stories. That doesn't mean that there aren't hardship stories. All of us had a lot of challenges to overcome along the way. And when you get challenges along your path, don't be shocked. Don't think there's something wrong with you. Just bounce back and keep going. Another piece of advice is be grateful. A spirit of appreciation, humility, and generosity is appreciated by all and shows that you are a leader that cares. On generosity, I can't find a better story to share than Santo Iacano. His whole attitude just conveyed a deep gratitude for the opportunities that were presented him and for the people that he had happened to chance along his life's journey. He probably said in our conversation, it was about a 2-hour conversation, I don't think it's a stretch to say that he said, but thanks to God, probably about 12 or 15 times. He talked about crucial moments in his life's journey that he met the right person. And he appreciated that. He didn't abuse it. He didn't, he was grateful. And that really travels far. And then the last one, if you believe in yourself, you will invest in yourself. My mom taught me that. And what that means is, if you want to grow in a certain direction, you have to be willing to invest, to put forth effort. You're not just going to get to, if your dream is having 10 rentals, you're not going to get to 10 rentals by just sitting on your couch and waiting until a realtor calls you with a deal that you can get at 75% of it, of what it's worth. You're going to have to put forth effort. You're going to have to find ways. If you don't have the 20% to put down, develop relationships. Find a landlord that is willing to sell and do seller financing. Be willing to invest in your growth and in your education, which all of you are doing. You are making an investment tonight by coming out and seeing what you can learn from other people. You're coming out here tonight and you're investing in yourself because you know that there are a lot of investors here and you can learn things. You can share stories. You can make connections. So I applaud each of you for doing that for yourself here tonight.
So I would, 25-year investor, I've been watching this game for a long time. I would tell you there was never in 25 years that I've been watching it a wrong time to buy real estate. There were better times and weaker times, but never a wrong time. If you're questioning it, just ask yourself a simple question. If I'd bought any real estate in the last 25 years, is it most likely worth more today than I paid? The answer is yes. So trying to be so smart to time it, there's some of you might be that good, but you don't need to be that good. Just jump in, take a small bite. Personal challenge. I've been encouraging some close friends recently to get started. Pick up your tax return. Look at maybe the last 2 or 3 years. If you paid a substantial amount of tax, it's a little bit oversimplified, but the amount that you gave to the federal government could have been a down payment on real estate, and they would have compensated you. They would incentivize you through tax breaks to do that. I know a couple of you out there are really pleased with the leadership in Washington. You want to bless them, go for it. I'm not. I'd like to keep as much on my side. So again, pull up a personal tax return. If you're paying in that 28% realm, a little oversimplified, but you could buy a real estate asset that lost 28%. You'd be break even against what you gave to the government. So do what they're incentivizing you to do. They want you to buy real estate. It's what helps grows the economy and grows our country. So take a look at that. Maybe that'll give you the courage to take that first step.
That's good. I was going to say we got time for maybe 1 or 2 questions. Sam?
So you were saying it's basically real estate's a good investment. Have you seen guys get over leveraged in 2008, 2009?
Yeah, so the question is 2008, 2009, over leveraged, get in trouble. Absolutely. Again, I said there was never a wrong time to buy real estate. If you were not over leveraged and you bought it, yes, your value probably went down, but how quickly did it come back? And it came back in multiples that were insane. So yeah, I mean, it's in the Bible. You've got to be careful. You've got to plan your steps carefully. I think what it said, count every cost to build. And you've got to do that. And with the higher interest rates, it's going to be a little bit tighter. But think about something else. If you were able to cash flow something today, and if you believe 3 years from now they might have the lower rates again, boy, did you just have a big win. You just ratchet down your investment again if you can. Ratchet down, get the lower interest rate, and with inflation, your rents are going to be up. So it works out over time, but yeah, I mean, there's never a time you should be over leveraged, in my opinion, no matter how good things are. Count the cost, take the steps that you can afford to. But over time, these things are little blips that keep going up. Any other feedback from you guys?
I think
I'd second that. That's great.
it's a really big key point because a lot of times we're asking, should I be buying? Is now a bad time? And it's based on the market, but your personal financial situation has a lot to do with that. It's good. Anybody else? Kevin?
What would the three say the over leverage point is for?
Glad you're not asking me. So what is over leveraged?
I would say 75% is probably about as high as I'd want to be right now. 50 would be a whole lot more comfortable, but I think anything over 75 in this market might be, you could be at risk.
If you're not sleeping well at night, you're over leveraged.
I was going to say the moment you have to ask your wife how much she just spent to get her toes done, and couldn't you do that yourself? You're over leveraged. You got a little problem in the house.
One more question? Anyone? Okay, we're going to wrap it up. Hopefully you guys will stick around. People can chat, ask some more questions after the meeting. How about a big hand for these guys? Every time we do something like this, I'm starting and I'm like, boy, I don't know if I have enough questions. I'm afraid I'm going to run out of something. And after bid, it's 8:30 and then it's 8:40, and we just almost don't know how to stop. So that was fun. Thank you guys. Just a couple real quick things. Eli mentioned he's got some books on the table in the back. What he didn't tell you is he needs some money to pay his driver bills, so he does need to sell a couple books. There's books in the back. There's a box on the table. He would probably even sign the books for you. Probably an extra $20. I'm not sure. You can ask him.
That's
but,
free.
Okay, that's good. Big announcement for next meeting, next month's meeting, August the 2nd, whatever the first Wednesday evening is in August. We have Dave Kaufman coming up from Florida. Dave is a pretty well-known keynote speaker, and he has agreed to come and speak to our group. For those of you that might be watching online, unfortunately, as of now, the plan is to not record that one as per his request. He is a professional speaker, normally charges a pretty hefty speaking fee. So he's requesting we do not record that meeting. That's the first time for quite a while that we won't be doing that. He is a pretty well-known speaker. It's a pretty good opportunity. I don't know how many people are going to come, but we have a second room reserved, so we're going to open up the wall. We're going to have double the space, so feel free to spread the word. He's a pretty captivating speaker. How many of you know Dave Kaufman from Florida? Maybe a quarter of you. So it should be fun. And on the topic of his speaking fee, so he has given us a very generous offer, but we do want to pay him something. So there is going to be more of a specific opportunity to drop some money in the donation box for him at the next meeting. No obligation, but we're hoping to give him at least a couple thousand. So John's asking what's his topic. So I'm not exactly sure yet what he's going to speak on, but he is best known for, he's a certified DISC personality profile trainer. He's I forget exactly what it's called, but the level that he's at, he's one of 10 in the world. So he's a high level on that. There's a couple different things that he could talk about, so we haven't quite nailed that down yet.
But he's also a very well-known business coach and is really, really good at that.
Right. So that's next month. Hope you can make it, bring somebody along. I don't know how much space we're going to need, but we'll have almost double the amount of space that we do here tonight. So with that, we're going to wrap it up. Thanks for coming out. Meet some people, make some new connections, and we'll see you next month.